fun board colors.
Isn't it amazing? And like my birds, little birds in there. Wait,
Decked it all out.
just flowers.
Tropical flowers.
There's one bird.
There you go.
Smaller than it was 20 seconds
I just
ago.
like the color. You have to like.
Home or vice versa. Wait for Andrea. Lost Andrea. Get started.
Ran to the bathroom or something.
Yeah, probably. Or she's calling the plumber, find out what's going on with her.
Have them intercom her.
Yeah, right?
Have an intercom
Andrew?
of the whole building.
Andrea, please report
I'm
to
so
the.
curious how they came about getting speakers in the bathroom.
I know, I was just in there, I was like, wait a minute, is that
It's amazing.
new? It's gotta be new. I don't know why they have you over there, I agree. Sit over here. I agree. Has Forrest name tag in front of you, but that's okay. I'd rather have you up front.
By special request to separate you out.
All right. Are we ready then? You're recording? Okay. All right. Oh, is Forrest online now? Okay. Very good. All right. We'd like to welcome everybody out to the Harriman City General Planning Commission meeting for this Wednesday, July 19th. We're going to go ahead and begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, and Floressa Thurston will lead us. If you can just come forward and, yep, come on up front. You had no idea what you were in store for when you volunteered.
I said,
Yeah, come on up. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Floressa. We appreciate that. We do have a full quorum tonight, and just by way of announcement, we do have Forrest Sickles, who is online as well, but he will be voting as well tonight as a part of our Planning Commission. So item 3.3, just want to ask if there are any conflicts of interest from with any of the Planning Commission and the items that are on the agenda for tonight. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into our administrative items. And we'll begin with item 4.1, which is a consideration of a conditional use permit for the Garage Plaza site. Sheldon, it's all yours.
Get started here. Okay, as you said, this is a conditional use application for Garage Plaza. It's located just down the street here off 126 next to Garage Grill. There's the site. It's part of the Midas Crossing Retail Phase 1. It's lot 104 is where the proposed request development's going on lot 4. What the proposal consists of is a 7,000 square foot multi-tenant structure and a Toscano's restaurant. The multi-tenant building is about 22 feet tall, and they're providing 30 parking stalls. Toscano's is 5,000 square feet. Again, it's about 22 feet tall as well, and 53 parking stalls. And I want to say, I think I'm actually incorrect on the 22-foot tall on the Toscano's. I believe it's closer to 32 feet.
Okay.
Sorry about that. The proposed materials are brick and stone per our C2 design standards. 60% brick or stone on all facades. They are meeting that requirement. Again, with some additional stucco and some glazing, as we talked briefly in the work meeting regarding their accent band that runs across the building. That is a metal material. Again, it's not part of our permitted finished materials for commercial, but we're looking at that as more of an accent strip. Therefore, we still feel it meets that spirit of that design standard. Again, this is the proposed landscaping plan. They are meeting our minimum requirements for 15% of the overall site, and 5% of the parking lot is being landscaped. Again, staff findings, there are a few things we considered. There's some few concerns, well, a few issues we'd like to address here with the commission. One is the parking. Per ordinance, the required parking for the multi-tenant is 30 stalls, which they are meeting, but for the restaurant, it'd be 120. Therefore, the applicant found that to be a little excessive. They did provide a parking study. In that parking study, they did find, based on that study, with similar uses, and taking consideration the cross parking between lots 101 and 104, that to meet their maximum peak times would be 86 parking stalls, and off-peak times would be 83. The applicant's proposing 83 parking stalls. Staff does, recommend, does support the 83 stalls, but would recommend that they actually do add an additional pedestrian connection between lots 104 and 101, just to provide a convenient access for pedestrians if the overflow does go into Garage Grill or vice versa. Again, and then on landscaping, there's just one issue that would need to be addressed is that on the landscaping buffer that's along Harriman Auto Row, they're showing a 15-foot landscape buffer there on the parking area. Per ordinance, they have to install a 2-foot berm to get that 15-foot reduction from a 20-foot, which was required. Outside of that, staff does recommend approval with the following conditions. If you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to.
So I was noticing that pedestrian crossing that you were proposing out there, it is going into, looks like, right into their parking lot on the other side. So is there any concerns with, with the way that's tying into the parking lot? There's not like a pedestrian path that it connects to into the other lot.
Right, so they'd have to remove some landscaping to install that. The alignment may be skewed a little bit, so it runs into an actual parking stall. So they're not losing 2 stalls or have to restripe their entire parking lot to accommodate that access. There is, I think, looking at the plans, there's about 2-foot grade difference between the Garage Plaza and the Garage Grill site. Being that this is not the primary pedestrian access to the site, it doesn't have to meet ADA requirements, so it could be stepped down with some handrails if that's required per building code.
Okay. But they probably will lose a parking stall on that side too when they make this connection
they will lose a parking
likely.
stall, and as mentioned, the Garage Grill was required to have 99, they provided 113. The applicant says they rarely meet that capacity at Garage Grill.
All right.
Therefore, I think losing one lot's not going to be detrimental to the parking availability at Garage Grill.
But that's the only other, there's no other improvements that would have to happen on the Garage Grill side to accommodate that. They just
probably
stripe out a parking
stall.
stall.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Andrew, did you have a?
So I had a question. If it is underparked and the Garage Grill parking lot is full, where would customers be able to park? Is there street parking that's nearby they could park on, or where would that force them to park, do you think?
So in a case of if both
Everything's
parking
full.
areas
Yeah.
hit their maximum, that's a good question. So I'm assuming the shoulder's wide enough, they could probably push that onto Auto Row. I don't know if that's preferable or not. Again, there is a private access that runs there. They could potentially park there, or maybe they could actually open up some of Lot 3, which is undeveloped, maybe to push some of that overflow parking into there if that was the case.
Yeah.
Is there a proposal for Lot 3 yet, and is it owned by the same person that owns the other lots?
My assumption is, I'm not sure if the applicant owns lots 2 and 3.
Okay.
They may be able to answer that, but.
Yeah, we could talk to them about that. Yeah, that's a good question for them. Any other questions for Sheldon? Okay,
Good.
all right, thank you. All right, if the applicant's here, I'd like to come forward and provide any additional information. You've heard some of our discussion, maybe answer some of those questions as well for us.
My name is Steve Pruitt. With regard to the questions that were brought up, in addition to the extension of the sidewalk into Lot 1, there's also an accessible pathway all the way from Auto Mall Drive all the way to the front door of the Garage Grill. So that would make 2 accesses in terms of pedestrian capability. In terms of overflow parking, we certainly hope we have that problem. We'd love to have it. But that being said, there is a recorded operating and easement agreement that provides reciprocal parking, ingress and egress over all of Midas Creek, all 14 lots of it. So we have the ability and the right to park on those, the lots that front on 126 South you know, to the extent that we would ever need it.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
improved or not, it's just
Right.
we have the ability to park on it. You know, I don't like guests to have to park on dirt, but
Right. Well, and hopefully it'll be fully developed here soon enough, and
That's-
there will be
we're
plenty of
hoping,
parking
yeah.
and shared
so.
as it goes.
But the
Yeah.
two questions raised, those are
Great.
the two answers.
Great. Any other things, any other items you want to present to us?
No, we just-
No concerns with what's being provided?
No, we're fine with all of the conditions for approval.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate your time. All right, any discussion from Planning Commission?
I think it looks good. I would like to make a motion for item 4.1 to approve with staff's 6 recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Heather.
Second.
Well, we'll give the second to Forrest online. Since he's online, we'll let him do that. All right, we'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote. We'll start with Preston,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Forrest.
Yes.
Great, thanks. That item passes. Thank you so much for your time. Excited to have you in our community. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to item 4.2, consideration of conditional use permit for a Come-A-Go convenience store. And so goes the march of Clint. Here we go, the rest of the night, right?
I apologize, you're going to get a heavy dose. Okay, so this is we've looked at a couple of come and goes. This is, I think, the third one, and this is in Teton Commercial. So just across the street from Harriman High School on 118th South. This is the location that we're looking at. There has been a consideration for the Wiggy Wash to the north of it. That was approved a couple of months ago, I want to say. And so this site is just to the south of the Wiggy Wash there, across the street from Harriman High. So what is being proposed is very similar to what other proposals have been. The store is approximately 4,000 square feet, 23 feet tall. The color and materials is very similar to what's been proposed, as well as the canopy. So you can see those requirements here. They're providing 21 parking stalls and 21% landscaping. This is the site plan, just to kind of get you oriented with how the site works. So it'd be on the right side, running north and south, is Mustang Trail Way. Wiggy Wash, you can see the dashed lines represent the Wiggy Wash site plan. So the store is set back from the street, the canopy's out front. There's two entrances, both of them off of the private streets that are provided in the subdivision. Dumpster location is on the north side of it as well. So there is good pedestrian connections through here. It ties into the existing right-of-way improvements on Mustang Trail, and then there's a complete sidewalk around the building, which provides good access for both pedestrians and bicyclists who use that site. This is their landscape plan, gives it a little bit better, a clearer vision of what the site will look like once it's all said and done. We can come back to these users for reference, so if you'd like to come back and look at them, we can a little bit more closely. But the landscaping plan does comply with city ordinance as proposed. So when we look at detrimental effects in the conditional use, there's only a couple of real concerns that we have. The first one, well, we don't have any concerns in terms of detrimental effects. There is a zoning compliance issue. And that would be to install metal gates on the dumpsters. They're showing trucks material, and the city does require those fences or those gates to be metal. Seem to last a little bit longer. So this is the caveat of tonight's discussion. Is in the MDA there's a provision. Well, in the MDA there's a couple of sheets, B and B1, I want to say, that outline the colors and the color palette and materials for this development. As Wiggy Wash came in, they were required to, they're a national brand, but they were still required to fit that color palette, and they did so. So there's a section in the MDA that speaks to national brands and says that that national brand form and function can continue, but they do need to comply, as staff interprets it. It does need to comply with the color palette of the MDA. So what's being proposed is similar to what's been proposed at other come and goes. Just And the material in question is the bright white canopy, or the bright metallic canopy, and the bright bright aluminum finishes on the storefront and the building itself. The master developer has provided a letter stating that these elevations do comply with the MDA. But as we looked at it as staff, we do have some concerns and just are looking for some clarification from the commission in terms of how this section here, how it affects the site and affects the materials that are being proposed there. So as I mentioned before, and in this statement here, it basically says that if a national tenant can continue their national branding, but about halfway through it talks about, that those colors and materials should still be followed to provide consistency in the project. In the MDA, so these colors are pulled from the MDA that was approved, and they speak specifically to steel beams and canopy, parapet coping, and aluminum storefront. So those first three colors that are kind of that bronzy brown color, those are the specific colors that were outlined in the MDA. It sounds like Wiggy Wash has an awning that was required to follow the same color materials. And so we just want to get direction from the commission whether or not these materials should be followed. There is also, as an accent color, there's kind of a light gray color. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that color could also apply if the commission sees these materials as an accent color. So that being said, we'll just leave it in the commission's hands to kind of review that and consider those, consider that material. As a staff, we do feel in terms of compliance, we usually go, in zoning, you go with a more specific provision, and where these materials are specific to the steel beams and canopy and aluminum storefront, we do feel like the bronze material should be followed. That being said, there's very few corrections with the site other than, the major thing is just that color. Other than that, everything else looks pretty good. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer whatever I can.
So Clint, will you tell us, they have 2 other stores already in Harriman, or just the one that's completed?
So this will be the 3rd application, I believe.
Okay.
So there's one just up the street here.
So on that one, what do they have?
So on both of the other ones, they all have this bright metallic. It's all bright metallic. And just because of the MDA, this is in a different area, has an MDA that's applied to this specific area that talks specifically to these other materials. That's the only reason for the difference.
So the other ones do have that Copper Mountain.
No, the other ones have the bright,
Okay.
the bright aluminum finish.
Clint, I have a question. You said that the Wiggy Wash next door was required to use these MDA colors then?
Yes.
Okay,
The precedence has been set for that.
gotcha.
Okay, any other questions for Clint?
I'll leave this slide up just so you can look through
Yeah,
it if you'd
that'd
like
be
to, for interpretation's sake.
That would be
But
great.
the applicant is here, I'm sure they.
Yes, yeah, yep, that's the next thing we'll do. Thank you. We'll go ahead and invite the applicant to come forward. Provide any additional information, and you've heard the discussion on the color palette as well, so anything more you'd like to add?
My name is Taylor Smith. I work with Galloway & Company. We've done the survey and civil engineering on this and the entitlements. We've been working closely with Clint and staff on all the come and go projects here. To answer your question, Commission, we do have one that is built right up the street and one that's started construction 2 weeks ago in Midas Crossing off 126 there. And we do have another one we're getting ready to submit next week for over by the, so, by Real Academy.
Good for you
So,
guys.
but they all will have that same metallic finish, that silver finish on it. We worked with the developer also on this, on coloring, and they provide us letters for us to be able to keep our national brand. Come and Goes has been a company, family-owned company for over 60 years now. They've kept these colors. It's kind of a nationally recognized color for them. And we interpret the MDA. I guess a little bit different than staff did, that, hey, we're doing all the other considerations. We've adjusted the colors to be able to match as best we could, but we really do want to keep that metallic color. It's just a kind of an icon for Come and Go. And so that's where we are at with that. As far as the gates, the metal gates, that's fine. That's a fine condition to put on. We comply with that, but we really would like to keep that silver color. We've been working with the developer also on this, and they've been supportive of it also. I think he might want to speak to it, so.
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
have
we
any
did,
questions
we did
before I
see,
step
well, I was
out?
gonna say, we did see the letter from the master developers approving that information as
Yeah,
well,
we
that, that color as well. But if there's anything additional, that's fine, we can have
Yeah,
them
we
come forward as
provided
well.
that letter too.
But yeah, we did see the letter as well,
Did
as a
you
part of
have
the
that in
packet, so.
Did you have that letter in the packet, Clint?
Yeah, we did get that in our packet, so go ahead and state your name for the record, please.
John Gust, I'm the developer, one
Thank
of the
you.
developers,
Yeah.
along with Kurt Young and Doug Young. You know, in the color palette of all the colors, there is a silver one in the palette, I mean, in the NDA.
In the MDA, okay.
Yeah. There is a silver, but it didn't get for the storefronts. But, you know, we're really pretty particular of how these things look and, you know, connectivity, landscaping and everything. But in reviewing that, we thought it was the color palette and the national branding fits well, and the color palette that they've done here works well. So we're recommending that you approve it. So we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate you being here. Okay.
Did you have a packet with the colors in it?
I do.
May we see that?
I believe the color is London Fog in the material board.
Yep, correct, London Fog. But you're saying that London Fog is not approved as a storefront color? Is that what the discrepancy is I'm hearing? And you could probably step back to the mic now, sorry, so folks online can hear as well.
You know, what happened is it was kind of a mistake in a way.
Okay.
The architect meant to put that in because we knew that we were talking to Come and Go at that time.
Gotcha.
And so it just got past all of us, so. But it did make the NDA, but,
Gotcha, okay.
all right, thank you.
Well, yeah, and the fact that,
Stated as an accent, and the question is was that intended, I guess, to be
right,
applied to these metal trims, the canopies, and
okay. All right. I didn't know if there was any questions for the applicant. We let him sit down, but did you guys have any questions for the applicant before we begin our discussion?
With the sorry, real quick, with the architectural features, they had like specific like bike racks we had to use and certain materials. And we went across the board to meet all those other features of the building, architectural standards, everything else, built to meet that. And just asking for we met as much as we could, like 90%, 95%, just asking for this one.
This is the only
variation.
questionable
Yep, everything
that-
else,
that-
yeah, is in compliance with the MDA. So certain bike rack, there's a certain bike rack we use at all our stores. They have one in MDA, we're using that. The metal gates, we'll work with them on everything. So everything else we complied with MDA. And then this one's just a little bit as an offshoot, so.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, we've seen the letter, we've heard both sides, now we get to make the decision, so. Okay, any other questions
Thank you.
for applicant? Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion points?
My only concern is that we required the Wiggy Wash to comply with those colors, and then to turn around and say, right next door, well, we're fine with it on this one, though. Seems a little inconsistent. That would be my only concern.
Yeah. I can see that as well. However, there is a letter from the master developer, and maybe the Wiggy Wash was more willing to make the change. Maybe it was still in line with their national branding as well. I don't know.
Well, looking at the national branding, you know, this color isn't what kind of makes their national branding. It's just kind of what they typically have on their buildings. And so, you know, I'm of the same opinion that, you know, this really just needs to kind of follow the color patterns in the architectural design standards for this area. And just like any other business, you know, they'd have to comply to it, so.
Yeah, and I guess, Forrest, you weren't here to see the color palette that was provided by the master developer as well. But the intent was, I guess, from the master developer to allow that color that is being proposed here as well, so.
Are there other buildings that will be built in this area that are under this MDA that will have to have the same coloring?
Yeah. And because you're showing 4 here, but the information we saw, there was, almost a dozen or so, 8 or 9 different colors that were shown on the
Yeah,
palette as
and
well.
that should have been included in the packet. You should have gotten a copy of that with all the colors.
Yeah.
But there's these 2 buildings that are being proposed now. I think there's, I want to say 3 smaller pads and then a larger big box or medium box sized building pad as well. So there's another potential for, really several buildings, but we've seen an iteration that had, on one of those pads had 3 buildings, another iteration had 4. So there's still several buildings to come for this development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't really mind the silver look.
Right.
Yeah.
The only hesitation I have is that we haven't built out the other buildings in the project, and we don't, like, the intent of the MDA is to keep everything kind of cohesive, you know, not looking too different. I'm kind of torn on this one.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm not voting unless there's a tie. There could be a tie on this one, but my opinion on this, we do have a letter from the master developer, and they're the ones that are making sure that any of the development that's happening in this area is abiding by the MDA, and according to them, they feel like they are. So, yeah. No, yeah, just a moment. If there's a question, we'll come to you. Yeah. So, do we want to let him provide any input? Is there any other thoughts? Go ahead and come forward then if you want to provide just additional thought there.
Yeah, the only other thought I'd have is a lot of the other buildings are going to be multi-tenant buildings. And so
Not
all
a
of this,
national brand coming in, right?
we'll have national brand and we'll have local brand in that. And so we'll stay consistent with the bronze throughout on these multi-tenant buildings. But that's why we knew this was going to come up. That's why we put in the NDA, the national brand, that they had a certain color palette and things that work for them the best. And so we felt good about approving it, and we felt that it had a very clean, nice design, and we were pleased with it. But on the other multi-tenant buildings, we'll control that. Although we have national tenants in there, we'll still stick with the bronze probably on all those.
So it really is, you want an exception for this one, is what it sounds like. You want to allow the silver just for this one particular tenant,
Yeah.
is what it's sounding like.
Yeah, and that's what, and it was also for the big pad, it was also in for the big pad, where we have the 10 acres left. You know, usually they're national brand tenants that will come in there, it might be a Smith's or I'm just throwing out names, or a neighborhood Walmart, or it could be a different grocery, it could be a lumberyard, it could be anything. So those guys have their national branding and colors, and that's why we put that in there originally, to give some flexibility to those guys.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Can we look at the picture of what they're proposing the exterior to look like? Thank you.
The bronze would clash.
I do too. I don't think it would look very good.
I don't think it would look
The
good.
silver looks better, but.
They'd have to change their other colors, and that's not their national brand either. Any other discussion, any other thoughts, opinions?
In my opinion, I'm fine with the aluminum.
Okay.
I think just that, I do see where it's kind of part of their national brand. Just to explain, I Googled storefronts for Come and Go just to see, and the vast majority of them do have that look. There are a few in certain locations though that obviously have had to comply with certain requirements. I don't know if the statement helped or hurt by saying like that the other ones would comply, because then I worry, well, will it stick out because then it is different or not? But yeah, I do think that if we were to require that, they may have to change the whole palette, which then can follow more with that argument of the national brand, because I think just changing just the one little streak, it's not a big deal, but then when you're talking, it's a bronze color, I agree, I don't know how well that would look. That might look funky. And it might clash with that red, regardless, and the red is, that Come and Go sign red is their national brand, so then I do see where that exception in the MDA would make sense.
I'll entertain a motion if we're ready, but I don't know.
We go to the recommendations.
Go to the recommendations, yeah. So we would, if we could strike or keep item 2. Well, match the colors as approved as part of the MDA.
Yeah, it would be.
I guess we would strike that because we have a letter. I mean, we have a letter, so it's approved by the MDA as well. So it's kind of that item 2, I guess. The intent there was that to change the color, so we could strike 2 just to make it clear. If that was the intent, to keep the metal color.
I did have another comment. So when we went to look at the Harriman, the one just down the street on Main, some comments were made about the landscaping. If we could look at that again.
Go to landscaping. I think the comments were about the size of rock was some
Yeah,
of the
the
discussion that
rock,
was
and
on.
then the vegetation didn't seem quite adequate.
Or was more, how do I say, young, juvenile, wasn't
Yeah.
grown out. It was some smaller, that would grow into this. I guess, I don't know if as a part of the master development agreement and the review that took place with that, if there's any discussion about, do you remember that when we were driving around, we did our field side visit a couple weeks ago, there was some discussion about the plantings and being a little
And
younger.
that was not pointing out an error against the standards. It
Okay.
was compliant. The question was, might there be
Some
a
improvement.
desire to
Yeah.
maybe adjust that? We are looking at our landscape ordinance again.
So right now,
That might be an issue.
Right now, that.
right now, they're meeting the landscape
Yeah.
ordinance, so there's no concerns there. Okay, perfect. Maybe encourage them as they do develop it and grow it to be able to provide more mature plans as that's happening, just so that it looks a little more finished rather than waiting a year or two for some things. So encourage that as well. Can't force that, but just a recommendation. So.
Do we have a minimum or a maximum, like, rock or that we require?
I think the only time the ordinance specifically calls, and maybe it's not even the ordinance, I think this is an engineering standard. The only time that a rock size is called out is in the park strip. So that is designed to be an 1.5 or greater.
Okay.
And the reason for that is just when you get a lot of water, if you have like pea gravel or something like that, that's going to wash out into the gutters, which goes into the storm system and kind of corks the works up that way. So that 1.5 tends to stay better. It doesn't, what do you call it? It doesn't move around as much. as other
Migrate,
sizes,
whatever.
but-
Yeah.
I feel like that's something we should look at in the future, is maybe requiring more mature plants or different, like, some rocks we wouldn't allow, like the really big ones, or is that something that we'd want to look at in the future, do you think?
I like the big ones personally.
Yeah,
That's my
I know.
opinion, but yeah.
I didn't,
yeah,
I
mind it.
didn't catch that,
Oh.
sorry.
Not for this, but just in the future, do you feel like that's something that staff has noticed an issue with? Like, maybe we should require more mature plantings or different rocks that might be restricted, or is that not really an issue?
That's a thought. I mean, that's something, we're revising our landscaping ordinance right now. It's something that we could visit if there's, an interest in doing that. When we look at landscaping plans, sometimes it's even hard for me when I go out and look at just, something that's just been planted and built. And I look at the planting plan and look what's there, and the planting plan matches, but the plants are just small. So
Yeah.
when we measure and look at landscape plans, we look at things at maturity. And that's what I think the plants here represent, is how big those plants get at maturity, how much ground they will eventually cover. So I think over time, those sites get, as the landscaping grows, obviously, that's going to provide more coverage and provide a little more beautification than when it's just a little dinky plant.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Could you go back to the color palette again? So one thought is that I do see in some of their designs and when looking, they do have they have a few where they've replaced the silver with black, and there is that steel beam canopy black fox color. I wonder how that would look. Just out of curiosity.
Now maybe we go to the
Yeah, well,
the
then we go
elevation
to the
views.
storefront look.
Storefront view,
There.
yeah.
I don't think that would then require a major makeover. Just a thought.
Couldn't they technically do that all red too?
That's not on the color palette.
I mean, there was a reddish color over there.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're saying bronze?
No, there was like a reddish
Oh,
color.
you're saying in the,
No, right,
yeah, that's bronze,
bronze.
or copper, or whatever. And that's the one that might clash a little.
Yeah, it looks reddish, so it's hard to.
Yeah, you know, again, I get back to master developers provided their thoughts and
Their approval.
their approval on it. So,
Yeah, but with that, you know, an MDA does not mean that the master developer gets to sidestep the actual MDA document.
but I don't think they are sidestepping that document. The colors that are being proposed are on the palette. They're not shown here, but they are in the MDA from what was provided. That color is there in the MDA that they are proposing.
Yeah, I think the intent in the MDA language was national user. And I agree, they've come with our letter of approval. So I'm ready to make a motion whenever.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we go to the recommendations, please? Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve item 4.2 with staff's 3 recommendations, removing number 2.
Okay, we have a motion by Heather
Second.
and a second by Andrea. We'll go ahead and call for a vote. Preston,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Forrest.
No.
Okay, that item passes with 3-1 vote. All right, thank you for being here. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4.3, but before we jump into the staff presentation on this, this is up for a public hearing, so I would like to just read the public comment policy and procedure. We do have a number of items moving forward that are up for a public hearing today. They are all in regards to the Olympia development, and there will be specific hearings for each item, so we will just, at the time, just be taking comments on that particular item as we move through these. So the purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to the Deputy City Director. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. And this policy also applies to all public hearings. And Clint, please. Go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I guess I didn't really introduce item 4 point, what is it? I don't even know. 4.3, thank you. Consideration of a preliminary plat for Laguna Point subdivision. Thank you.
So the location of this subdivision is kind of on the south side of Juniper Crest. It is, this is kind of an outline of the subdivision, just put in context with the surroundings. It's 68 lots, getting their main access off of Juniper Crest Road, and other access provided through Bartlett Drive. The proposal is for 68 single-family lots of about just better than a third acre and larger. The property is currently vacant now. Considerations for approval, so in terms of the engineering, there's minimal concerns there. There was a condition that was brought up later that we talked about in our pre-meeting today, And it has been just recently discussed with the applicant in terms of the lots fronting onto Juniper Crest Road, some improvements that are required there with a 6-foot masonry wall, an 8-foot paved or asphalt trail, and then the street landscaping along there, which would require the trees and minimum shrubs and stuff for that coverage. There was a concern from the fire marshal in terms of the accesses. They are providing 2, but because of the adjacency of those 2, there needs to be a larger separation. And so we're in, and well, I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. But in terms of zoning, there is a zoning condition on the property for a maximum of 1.7 units per acre. They're providing 1.67, so just under that. This is the zoning map for the area. You can see there's a yellow line that kind of runs through that development on the south side. That yellow line represents the hillside overlay, and that will be addressed mostly when those lots are developed. It's just stating, not that development cannot occur there, but if it does occur, there are certain provisions they need to follow, and that will be handled at the building permit process. They have provided on the plat areas of those lots that are not developable that fall within the 30% slope, which staff is satisfied with. This is about a 40-acre development. Again, fairly large lots. They are dedicating some open space and, of course, the street network to the city as well. Now, the open space is just designed to be undisturbed native vegetation, so there would be no specific plantings or any kind of maintenance there other than what needs to be done for fire safety and those matters. And this is where, so like I mentioned before, they are providing 2 accesses, but because of the proximity of those, the fire marshal did have a concern that in order for them to record and develop more than 30 of these lots right now, they would have to provide an additional access that the fire marshal would approve that gives a further distance of separation from those 2 access points. And so we're, in our conditions of approval, that's our one condition, other than the condition to install the right-of-way improvements along Juniper Crest, which would include that masonry wall, the 8-foot asphalt trail, and then the park strip improvements as well. So, that being said,
yeah, no, I concur with the fire marshal there that if there's any issue right there at that one intersection, you're blocking both accesses there. So that makes complete sense to me.
And they could still move forward with 30 lots as it is. Right. If they want to work with the fire marshal on providing that second access before they record and get that approved, then we can record all 68 lots.
Perfect. Any questions? Clint? Okay.
The applicant is here. I'm sure they'd love to.
Thank you. Yes, we'll invite the applicant to come forward and provide any additional information or any other insights that we'd like us to know about.
I'm Reed Dixon with Infinity Consultants. We've been doing the design and entitlement work on it. Have enjoyed working with staff. We've worked through all kinds of issues regarding utility design and lot layout and open space and so on. We've also worked with the fire marshal. Maybe the condition that's on here with concerning the fire marshal could be that we limit the initial phase to the 30 lots until we satisfy his concerns. There are other ways besides having 2 actual accesses. So one, we could provide a temporary, or maybe one could be wider, or there could be additional turnarounds. And he sometimes allows those kinds of mitigating methods. So
we could amend item 2 to just say work with the fire marshal to provide adequate access to provide more than 30 lots, not necessarily tied to 2 accesses. It could be 2 accesses, but you're saying it could be other amenities or other improvements that by them. Okay.
Yep, and that's it. If there's any questions, let us know.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah. I understand it's not part of the application, but for phase 2, you have up there, and then I'm looking.
And we should go to the map that
Yeah,
shows
if you want to go to the map, there you go.
That'll work.
So you got phase 2 in that bottom left section, and then right above it, you have an open space in lot 112, and then I see it's bubbled out there. Is that bubble necessary as a permanent fixture? Is that bubble just as a turnaround point, temporary, or?
That little knuckle right there by 112?
Yeah, that actually could be a temporary turnaround bubble if that road were to extend and then have a permanent cul-de-sac.
Okay. Because, yeah, I would, and are these streets planned as public streets? Okay. So,
Yes.
yeah, the less asphalt, the better. That, you know, when I don't feel like a bubble, permanent bubble would be necessary there, so.
No, that's a great comment. I think that could be a temporary turnaround that we show.
Okay.
And then in the permanent, that would go away and,
I don't know how that affects lot 112 for you, but anyhow.
Yeah.
right.
You know.
We'll look at that as we go to the next step.
Okay. Good comment. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, this item, as mentioned, is up for a public hearing. So at this time, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing for any comments on this item. Okay, seeing no comments, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion by Heather. Second by Andrea. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Any other discussion from Planning Commission on this item?
Maybe just a quick question for staff. So on lots 144 to 138, so those areas are part of the hillside overlay zone, right? Like partially?
If you go to the map that shows the hillside overlay, there's a figure that showed that. I did notice that as well. Yeah. You can see those, that overlay zone goes through those lots.
Right. So those lots would be affected by that hillside overlay, which basically speaks to how those need to develop. They just need to provide some additional information in terms of hillside safety and grading and that kind of, those kinds of matters. On the plat itself, it does show a 30% slope line where that is, they can't even touch that, those slopes, but the rest of it could be developed.
Yeah, and these are larger lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is still, like I said, developable room.
Plenty of room to put
But the city's okay with how it's looking right there with the line going through those lots?
There's special, it sounds like there's special conditions that the developer would have to do to
Yeah.
do anything else within those limits and.
Right, and
So-
sometimes that can even be going into more of a detailed study of the property to determine that, I think when the hillside overlay was done, it was kind of on a rougher scale. As they come in for each of those, and as they have done on their preliminary plat, they've shown that 30% grading slope through those properties. And that gives us a little bit better idea of where those 30% slopes really exist. Our hillside ordinance, or our hillside overlay is kind of just to kind of keep tabs on where those impacts might land on certain developments. So with a more specific design in place, we can better mitigate and require improvements for when they're actually built out.
Yeah, I was just pointing out that right there on Step Rock Lane, it goes into that one lot right there as well, but obviously they've been able to work with the city on getting a home placed on that lot as well already.
Yep.
Clint, are there geotechnical requirements for these lots on the hillside?
Yeah, there's every subdivision needs to provide a geotechnical report.
Do you, and maybe this is a question for the developer, do we know what the plan is for those open space areas?
From my understanding, it's just undisturbed, just native.
Just native
Yeah.
plant, okay. Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other thoughts? Your motion? By somebody other than Heather? I'm kidding. If Adam was here, he'd be doing them all too. So.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve item, which one is this? 4.3. Along with the conditions 1 and 2, with a modification to 2, that is working with the fire marshal to provide appropriate access.
Permanent access?
Yeah, that the fire marshal would approve
To meet
of.
the fire marshal's
Yeah.
requirements. Okay.
And then didn't staff have a third condition for the lots 101 to 107?
Oh, and then,
Thank
yeah,
you.
and a third.
We didn't discuss that. Let's withdraw that motion. Let's have a quick discussion. I
I'll go
forgot
ahead and
about
withdraw that motion.
Yeah, sorry, Forrest, there was, did you write those down? I've got them written down here. But let's talk about it quick, and maybe we need to make sure that the applicant's okay with this as well. But if you go back to the map, so lots 101 through 107 that are adjacent to Juniper Crest Road, we want to make sure that there is an 8-foot asphalt path that is installed along there, as well as a precast wall, and that the park strip landscaping for these meet the updated city standards. I believe that was the recommendations there, so. I don't know, I didn't have anything for as well as along the detention basin, yeah. Anything that fronts Juniper Crest Road, excuse me, that would have the 8-foot asphalt, precast wall, and then the park strip landscaping. Maybe she's already got that. You can read my writing if you can. So we'll entertain a new motion, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, yeah, I'll go ahead and now make a new motion to approve item 4.3 with the following conditions. Number 1, resolve all remaining corrections. Number 2, work with the fire marshal and modify that to provide adequate access according to the fire marshal's approval. And a third item, all frontage along Juniper Crest to include lots 101 and 107 through lot 107, including the retention pond, to install asphalt as well as an 8-foot precast wall. And
8-foot path, and it's an 8-foot asphalt path.
8-foot asphalt path and a precast wall.
Perfect.
And a park strip that complies with current standards for the city.
We get that all right for you. Very good. Okay, we have a motion by Preston. Do we have a second by Forrest? Is that what I heard? Yes. All right. Go ahead and call for vote. We'll start with Forrest.
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
And Preston?
Yes.
All right, that item passes. Thank you so much. We'll move on to item 4.4, which is a consideration of preliminary plat for the 6400 West Street dedication.
Okay, so we've been hearing about and working with the Olympia development for quite some time now, and the rubber is finally starting to hit the road. So this is the first plat that we received. Well, the first of several plats that we received for the Olympia project. This is roughly where the project takes place, and it's highlighted in yellow. This consideration that we're looking at is specifically for the Olympia backbone road dedication, as well as the dedication of a large 7-acre plus park for the city. So that being said, there's no residential units included in this. The road dedication will provide access for most of the Olympia project, Great Basin subdivision that we're looking at tonight, Kings Canyon, and then it also will connect to the future Olympia Boulevard. And then again, the dedication of that 7-acre park that the applicant is currently working with the city in terms of design and installation on. In terms of engineering, very few concerns. The zoning, the only correction we would have, so as you look through the plat, there was one section here that highlighted red. So wherever you have a trail that acts as kind of a public access or sidewalk along the adjacent roadway, we just want that to be included in the dedication to the city for maintenance and access and all those kinds of things. So that's the only caveat there. In terms of the MDA compliance, they do comply with their MDA that they've provided. We've been working for quite some time, gone back and forth with the developer on several issues. They've been very cooperative and provided quite a few betterments for the development to make it a little bit better than most. So this proposal also will connect 6400 West from the north of Olympia to 126 South, I believe, and that will include the roadway and all the landscaping improvements on both sides of that road. So it provides access again to several of the subdivisions we'll look at tonight. It gives us a trail on both sides of the road as well. And then the design of the roundabout here provides quite a few pedestrian amenities. You get a lot of pedestrian islands where that road could be quite large, gives you an island to go out and rest on until you make your way across the entire swath of road there. Better than most than most landscaping plans as well. So that being said, these are the conditions there. They're, like I said, very minimal. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. The applicant is also here on this one.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Clint? Well done. I like the roundabout. It looks really nice. Looks really good. Good design, good landscape. Okay, we'll allow the applicant to come forward and provide any additional information. Anything more on this item? We're going to probably see you a lot tonight, but on this dedication tonight.
We're up for a few of them. So I'm Kirk Young with the development team. Just wanted to stand up and tell you thank you for allowing us to come forward tonight, and thanks to all of the city staff for all the hard work that has gone into it. It's been a lot of hours of meetings and reviewing a lot of drawings, so we appreciate all the work. We're just really excited to get Olympia started and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and the staff also provided a great compliment to you as well during our work session, so thank you for what you're doing also. Any questions, though? Before we let them sit down, but I didn't know if you had any questions for the applicant or not. No, that's fine. Sounds like we're good. This item is up for a public hearing as well. So again, there's a few items on here for Olympia. Right now, we're just going to be having a public hearing on this, the road dedication and the adjacent park for that. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody would like to come forward and provide any comments on this 6400 West Street dedication plat. Is that for this item or is that for a different item? It could be. Thank you. All right. I'll ask that question. That doesn't need to come up as a part of the public hearing, but I'll ask the applicant after the fact. You know, we'll bring that forward for you. All right. I don't see any other public comments coming forward, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. I can't get that.
Have a motion by Heather. Second by Andrea. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Appreciate that. There was a question that came forth, and I'll go ahead and ask the question as well, that there's going to be a lot of construction and things that are going to be happening with this. What will be the main road for construction equipment to access for construction as this is developed? So I'll go ahead and ask that of the applicant, and you can come forward and let us know your thoughts as things are moving forward here.
Yeah, so obviously the construction of this road in particular, most of that will come off of 126 South. As the work's right there.
Yeah.
For most of the home building and all of the other pods that we're working on, we're planning on going up 126 and coming out and around, so we don't have all that traffic going through the neighborhoods.
It'll be on the main roads.
Yeah.
That one, and now 6400 as that gets developed, that'll be the main route then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I do have my engineer, Bob Elder. He's here as well, if you guys do have questions, and our land planner, Eric Langbart. Forgot to mention that earlier. So
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, any discussion from Planning Commission on this item?
So I think staff said the roads in this development would be public roads, right?
Correct. Can we go to the recommendation slide? Okay, there it is. So those are the four.
I agree with your comment. I love the roundabouts.
Yeah, that looked really nice.
Flows traffic flows a lot better through those than stops.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve item 4.4 with staff recommendations that include resolving all remaining corrections, working with staff on the design of the proposed park, include all trails and dedication plat, and stones in park strip limited to 1.5 inches.
All right, we have a motion by Preston.
I'll second that.
Second by Heather. Call for a vote. Preston?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And Forrest?
Yes.
Great, that motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 4.5, excuse me, consideration of a preliminary plat for Great Basin at Olympia, Phase 2A.
Do you want to do Kings Canyon or Great Basin?
This said Great Basin as 4.5. Did we have the wrong one up?
We can go either way.
Yeah, we could jump around. I don't have a problem if you want to go to,
Okay.
oh, there's Great Basin. Okay.
Okay. So, again, going to the subject property, this is, so this colored map here kind of gives an overview of all of the applications that we've received so far from the Olympia Group. The only, in the MDA, it states the only plats that need to go through a public process for public, to go to the Planning Commission specifically, are those lots and developments that are directly adjacent to already privately owned and developed residential lots. So, for example, you can see that Great Basin is all of that purple area, but we're only going to be looking at this one phase of development that's directly adjacent to the existing lots above it. Same with Kings Canyon, and then as you move over to Joshua Tree, all three of those phases have frontage onto privately owned lots, so that entire development will be considered tonight as well. So going back to Great Basin, for this proposal, it's a very simple proposal. We're looking at 22 residential single-family detached lots. Minimum lot width is about 50 feet. The density meets the MDA requirements. The access from this is one thing that I might point out. So as we just looked at that Olympia backbone, you can see that in order to get to this development, you have to go down 6400 West, and then you'll have to go through a neighborhood street it's that Great Basin Phase 1, where that entrance street off of the major backbone street comes in, and then you'll get access into that subdivision. And that's reflective in our conditions of approval. And I believe, I'm certain that that's the way the developer intends to develop this. So, and maybe just as a side note, as part of the approval process for this subdivision, it does come before a public body. The other subdivisions that don't will go through an administrative approval process, and that's when we can kind of look at everything as a whole and make sure that, you know, the development takes place in a manner that makes sense. Again, working with the developer to make sure that all those phases kind of flow and make sense in terms of how and when they're developed. Again, very minimal concerns from engineering. Let's see. So this is where that consideration for the road dedication comes into play, is making sure that we get dedications of 6400 West and that Great Basin Phase 1 at or before this plat is recorded. So before this particular plat, or when this particular plat goes to be recorded, it will also have to show that we can gain public access to this site. So that's why that 6400 West dedication will need to take place. The Phase 1 subdivision will need to take place as well, which will include the road dedication from 6400 West over to this project. And then all three of those plats can be recorded at the same time. But we just want to make sure that we're not approving something that doesn't have the access that it needs. So again, here's this is an overview of the lots. Pretty standard single-family detached. This gives us a better idea in terms of context of landscaping and streetscape, what we're going to be looking at there. And this is just another overview of the landscaping. So Again, if there's any questions on this one, I'd be glad to take them, but hopefully we've explained this one okay.
Makes sense. Any questions for Clint? Okay, thank you. All right, Kirk, anything more you want to come forward? Is there any additional information you want to provide on this one for us, for Great Basin?
Question.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a question. So I thought I noticed that the smallest lot was going to be about 4,900. What size houses are you tied to on that? Do you know?
What do you mean, like the width of the house, or?
Just like the square footage.
Footprint.
I don't really have the ranges. Those houses will typically be about a 40-foot wide home on there.
40-foot wide on a 50-foot. Okay, so 5-foot side yards.
Yeah.
That answer your question?
I'm just curious on the square footage, like if you're going to put a giant house and have a tiny lot, or if you're going to scale down the houses to kind of fit the lot a little better.
It'll just depend on the house plan. I know they'll have a lot of ranges. The main floor may be as low as 12 to 1,300 square feet. And
is
up
it
from
more
there.
what the buyer chooses? Is that how
Yeah.
you're doing it? Okay.
Yep.
Still have to meet the required setbacks and offsets
Yeah.
and whatnot, but.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yep.
obviously, so. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Again, item 4.5 is on for a public hearing. So I will go ahead at this time and open up the public hearing for item 4.5, which is for the Great Basin at Olympia Phase 2A. Any comments from the public? Come forward, go ahead and come forward. We'd like comments. You can ask a question, but we'll see if we can answer it. But we're just taking comments. If you have a question, that's fine to ask it, but we'll wait until you're done with your comments and the public hearing before we address any comments. So go ahead and state your name for the record.
Samantha Gonzalez.
Great, thank you, Samantha.
So that line where that subdivision will start, there is like a rock wall, like all along kind of all those houses all the way down west. Is that going to maintain to be there, or is it going to be fenced? Because the lots will be connected back to back. So I guess that's my concern, question.
Question or concern? Fine. And yeah, go ahead, and if there's anything else, like I said, we'll go through the public hearing, then we can come back to your questions
Yeah, I think
after.
that'll be it for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, I don't see any other comments, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I will second.
Thank you. We have a first by Heather and a second by Preston. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. We'll go ahead and allow the, applicant, Kirk, if you want to come forward and answer this question for our citizen here. Or maybe he's still trying to figure out the answer for us. I don't know.
As part of
Kirk?
that,
Yeah.
While we're waiting on that, as part of that, I also wouldn't mind hearing from Clint in terms of what the requirement would be on that as well with the city ordinance,
Yeah.
with the existing development being residential, butting up on residential.
Yeah, I don't think
if there's
there's
a
this-
wall there, they don't have to tear it down, but it's not
Right.
part of the requirement, so.
Right.
A retaining wall?
No, I think they're talking, it's
It's like a precast wall.
precast wall. Were you able to catch that question
I
for
think
us?
so.
Okay.
Was it the north side that you were asking about?
Yeah, I think it was the north side, the existing development that's already there. I believe there's already a
Precast wall.
precast wall that is
All the way along
adjacent to
there.
all that.
Yeah, so we're planning on doing a continuous wall there. And if our property lines cross there somehow, we'll have to work with those property owners to make that all match all the way down.
Yeah, because this, right, city ordinance is required, you can't have back-to-back walls, it's a single wall, so you'll probably take advantage of the fact that that's already there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming to not
Yep,
go
that's
in and
what I just
replace
seen.
it, just.
Yeah,
utilize that.
I guess I haven't, do you guys know if that was on the?
Maybe some future details still to be determined.
Okay. There's a call out that we'll be doing a wall there, but we'll have to work with those property owners.
Yeah, see what's there, yeah.
On there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because that's a city requirement anyway, so that you'll have to meet with. Okay, perfect. Any other discussion?
Well, yeah. I just am curious as to what the residents would want too. I mean, obviously they're not here to say that, but, and that's what he's saying, he'll work with them, but if they would want a wall in their backyard or if they'd rather have just a fence with their back neighbor.
Well, I'm trying to just remember what is out there. I don't know if I know. Mike, I don't know, or you or your staff knows what's there now. If it is a precast wall.
It's not a requirement to be a precast wall, it's
No.
residential on residential. So
Yeah.
but I don't know, it'd be interesting if some of the residents want it there and others are like, no, tear it down and we want a vinyl fence with our neighbor.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at least on Google Earth, it's kind of showing hit and miss on whether people even have a fence along there or not.
So it may just be a private, I mean, it wasn't part of that development then, it sounds like. If the private owners have gone in and done that, then I guess.
Looks like that.
The adjacent neighbors will have to, you'll have to work with them on
Yeah,
that.
we'll have to just work on that.
Yep. Yeah, because the requirement, you're right, it's not a wall. Fence
Right.
is sufficient for that. Yeah.
The comment she did say there was a wall, so
Yeah, and
at least I'm assuming for the property she's referencing.
And I believe there is a requirement for walls adjacent to 6400 though, right? So those will require a wall.
Yeah.
A precast. Yep. Okay. All right. Sounds like no other discussion.
I like the number of trees. The more trees, the better, and it looks like you guys have more than, I would say, average for homes. I like that, just to let the developer know my opinion.
Is this the one that we need to ask them to update the numbers?
It's the land use plan, and that would be true for all of the phases that you're seeing tonight. So it's just basically one land use plan update that would reflect what's
All
on
of
your
these.
agenda tonight.
Yeah, since this is the first one, we could tie it to this one.
Well, in terms of impact, I mean, this one meets the density that they're showing on their land use plan.
Okay.
I think it's when we get further west, I think it's Joshua Tree that has a higher density than is being shown. So I just included that provision on the one that actually changes.
Okay, so you've had that as a recommendation on
On a
Joshua
separate-
Tree, the
yeah.
second one, so that'll be covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Awesome. I'll entertain a motion. I can't make a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve item 4.5 with staff's 3 recommendations.
All right, we have a motion by Heather
Can I?
Second.
and a second by Forrest.
We're good.
We're good. All right, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Forrest, since you're going, go ahead.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And Preston.
Yes.
All right, jumping around there. Perfect, that item passes, is approved. All right, we'll move on to item 4.6, consideration of a preliminary plat for Kings Canyon at Olympia Hill, at Olympia Phase 1.
Okay, so I think we're just moving to the west here. So on the west side of 6400 West, we did Great Basin. You can see the highlighted area now is moving to the west. This includes mostly single family. There is some attached units in that the southeast corner of that yellow portion of the plat. So there's 61 residential lots, I guess there's 9 single family detached units and 52 attached units. That's flipped, right? Should be the other way around. 52 single family detached, 9 attached units.
Okay.
That's important. Big difference.
Yeah, I was looking, I thought, wait a minute, 'cause, yeah, you look at those lots and you can see where the attached and detached units would be. So obviously access off of Oceanside Drive and 6400 West. Their open space is just over 5%, and their density does meet the neighborhood designation. Again, you know, with all of our zoning comments, it's mostly going to be making sure that subdivision plats are recorded, that the correct dedications take place so that there's access, appropriate access to each of those phases of development, which I'm sure the developer is savvy of and wants to have happen as well. And on this one, we do provide that caveat to work with staff to update the land use plan in the MDA. That can be done administrative as per the MDA. And I'll be trying to schedule a meeting probably in August. When I spoke with Ryan Button, he wanted to meet with staff to kind of look at how that process would look and what exactly the city is looking for. And we just want to make sure that as development takes place, we get an accurate depiction of what and how the project is developing. Again, there's, in terms of zoning and MDA compliance, there really isn't anything out of place here. What's being proposed does match their MDA. This is their overall landscape plan for this part of the development. And just another couple of the lot layout, the landscaping here, the specific plan anyways. So really, same conditions on this one with the addition that they work with staff to update those master plans, to specifically the land use plan to show the correct density designations.
Excellent. Any questions for Clint? All right. We'll let the developer come forward again, provides any additional information you have. I do have a couple questions that have come up, but anything more you want to add before I ask my questions?
Nope, not on this one.
Okay, so a couple questions that have come up. It's a little different how we're seeing these. The questions are from the public, but I appreciate them anyway, and I'll go ahead and ask them on their behalf. So these developments that are coming in, there's been some questions asked about, are they going to be single-story, two-story, three-story? I mean, what type of product are you looking at for all of these developments that are coming in at this time for tonight?
Throughout the whole thing, on all the phases that we're showing tonight, there'll be some 2- and 3-story.
2, 3.
And on these in particular, most of those I'm guessing will be 2-story.
2-story, but you're not looking at any
over 3.
None of them single-story then? Most of them will be at least?
No, there'll be some.
There'll be some single-story as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would guess on these smaller lots, you typically see 2-story or at least a 1-story with a kind of a loft up top. So that'd be my guess.
Basements as well, likely as well, right?
Yep.
And then another question that I have, there is going to be a lot of development coming on. There is a lot of other routes that your workers and the construction be taking place. One particular with Oceanside Drive, that's on the west side of this, that would be accessing this development here. There is a park. There's a lot of children that are going to be out playing and stuff like that. But we can't, it's a public street. We can't, force people to stay off a street, but we would encourage, I guess, to make sure that your workers and stuff are using the main 6400 and they're not bypassing the routes or, using the main thoroughfare so that they're not getting into the neighborhood. And I'm assuming you're going to be encouraging that as well as this development is.
Yeah,
is
we're going to have
taking
a
place.
construction route for them and hopefully keep them off those streets as much as possible.
Perfect. So that's a construction route then that all workers are known and strongly encouraged to use as well. So
yeah, we don't want them going through the subdivision with all the kids. So we're going
Perfect.
to try and keep them actually out and around off 126. So
great
for a lot of that. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Any other? Sorry, I didn't. Any other questions from anyone else for the developer? Okay. Thank you. All right. Again, this is up for a public hearing, and I did. Hopefully some of your questions were answered. But if there's any more that you would like to come forward with, by all means, we will welcome that. So again, I'll open up the public hearing at this time for item 4.6 for the preliminary plat for Kings Canyon Olympia Phase 1. If there's any comments. Go ahead. Yep, come on forward. Yep, step forward and.
Hello, my name's Randy Smith. I actually live in Creek Ridge South, directly adjacent to this development. My back fence is lined up with it. This is a fantastic development. I know there's a lot of fight about density and all kinds of things. This is what we need. Our kids are going to need it, and our middle class needs it right now. So it's fantastic. That being said, I am concerned about the traffic down Oceanside Drive, so I'm glad to hear I'd love like a no construction access, you know, as my kids walk up to that park. That would be, make me feel safer. And then lastly, I've been looking at these lots and where they are adjacent to my home and the homes that are north of mine. So in our subdivision, our homes are about 60 feet setback from the property line. In this development, we can have 2- and 3-story homes 10 feet from that property line. And that feels a little bit like a loss of privacy. It feels a little bit like a loss of quiet enjoyment of my own property. And I'd love to see, I think the setbacks are built correctly when they're adjacent to each other, but adjacent to these lots, a rear setback might be appropriate. Maybe the setback is equal to the height of the structure. So the shorter structure can be closer, or a taller one is pushed back a little further, or something like that, just to keep that feel, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts. This is my daughter Evelyn. Didn't introduce her, but appreciate you guys and your hard work, and you're here late at night. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for as well. Anyone else like to provide comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
I have a motion by Andrea,
Second?
second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 4.6. So I would invite the developer to come up, and Mark, if you want to come up and answer that question about, and maybe it's Clint, I don't know, there's setback requirements, things like that for lots. Maybe give us a little discussion on those setback requirements for these.
I appreciate what the resident was stating. I can see his concern, having a larger lot and then having some smaller lots coming in next door to him. As part of the MDA, that's when those setbacks were established. And so the setbacks are already in place, and I'm not, for some of these single-family lots, I don't think it's as close as 10 feet to the back property line. I'd have to check the MDA and see exactly what it is.
I would find that hard to believe as well, hopefully.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know off the top of your head or not what those approved setbacks from the rear are.
Yes, and that's more the front.
You'd think we'd be more familiar with this. We're having,
Yeah, right?
having delved into Olympia as many times as we have, but numbers, I try purposefully not to memorize things because my memory does not treat me well.
You can only hold so much in there, right?
Yeah.
Kirk, I don't know if there's any, if you. We're trying to pull that out. Yeah, that's fine. And we'll give you some time. We got another opportunity to discuss this tonight as well, but.
The setback discussion, I mean, it's, as much as it's appreciated, it is kind of past the point.
Out of our.
Yeah, it kind of is, yeah.
The MDA does establish those setback requirements, and, yeah.
I don't know if, I can't see the dimensions on these lots that are adjacent to them, but they do
Well,
fill fairly deep, you know.
Most of them are, so they're 50 wide. I would assume that they're probably close to 100 feet deep.
100 feet deep or so.
Yeah, if you get a home that fills most of that, it's probably not in the right place.
Yeah.
The MDA says single-family front-load product has a rear yard of 10 feet.
So it is a 10-foot
So,
Can go 10, but likely on these, they
Right.
probably wouldn't
yeah,
because
and
they
we
are
had
so
the
deep.
same problem here in the town center, and I can certainly appreciate the comment of this resident. And if there was any way for the developer to, even though the MDA allows for 10 feet, it is a difficult transition.
Yeah,
And
so
10
I'm
feet is
looking.
just not enough.
I'm looking at the lot size, and it is 92 feet deep on these. So again, encourage as best as we can to keep those. You know, we got to have so much on the front, though, for your driveway as well, so you have parking, and that takes up some of the front setback. It's 20, was it 24 from the sidewalk? I can't remember, from back of the sidewalk.
I mean, a typical single family is going to be 20, 25 feet probably.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have a 25-foot setback, then a 40-foot envelope for a house.
That's 65 of the
Still-
92. You still got just under 30 feet, so 20 to 25 feet.
If that 10-foot setback ever really gets met, I'd be surprised, I think.
Yeah, yeah, on these lots here, because of the depth of these, so.
Having lived in a neighborhood similar to this previously, not to speak for the developer or what they'll end up doing, but maybe as a little bit of a comfort to the resident, the vast majority of these homes, most of that open land, so to speak, is gonna be in the backyard. They're not gonna dedicate most of that land to the front yard and set it back 10 feet from the back line, I would imagine.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they don't want to put,
Well,
they don't want a big, long driveway to pay
Yeah.
for and things like that. So
Well,
they
the
want
MDA
minimums
allows,
and-
yeah, well, the MDA allows 10 feet. I'd be surprised if any of those lots end up with a house within
Yeah.
even close to that 10 feet.
Unfortunately, that's the best we can do with this because the
Yeah.
MDA agreement has been signed. But again, I think just the nature of these lots being 92 feet deep, you're going to have 20 to 25 feet of setback from those, so, okay. All right. I'm sorry? All right, one more thing. Unconventional, but we'll go ahead and let you make a comment. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate it. I guess, yeah, I understand that the MDA says what it says, and that doesn't get changed. But that doesn't, I guess, preclude the developer from deciding to put on his own plat, these lots will have required to have a deeper setback.
That's true.
So that's up to you, Kirk.
Yeah.
Know your position, I'm a developer, so, and nice choice with Enzyme. You're gonna have great plans. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you. No, great.
I support that. I would recommend that as well. I know
Yeah.
that's a voluntary thing, but.
Yeah, be a good neighbor and, yeah, there's plenty of room to do that on these lots, so would encourage that as well. So thank you for that. Okay, any other discussion,
I just have a
thoughts?
question. So when we look at subdivisions, I know a lot of the time we always try to make sure that we're being good neighbors when we're putting in the new subdivisions to kind of match up with what's already existing. Was there anything in the MDA that we had?
A good neighbor clause.
A good neighbor clause, right? I mean, I'm just thinking about that because we've done that so much in the past.
Right, right, it sounds like,
I'm not sure that there's, I mean, I'm just citing what the standard is. If there's another element of the MDA that modifies that where it's a budding existing development, we'll look at that, but I don't recall that that was specified in this agreement.
maybe we could just, yeah, encourage that from the developer, but also look to see if the MDA has any teeth to it to allow a better transition, I guess, for a better word.
This is one of those challenges where you do such a large project, because we're trying to coordinate everything, but then you don't really get down to the
Nitty-gritty.
block level
Yeah.
or the pedestrian scale of what the impacts of these, agreements are.
Right.
Yeah, I remember dealing with a woman right here in the town center who had the same problem, and it was heartbreaking. Yeah.
Is there a major elevation change, do we know, between existing development and not? In other words, are they closer, but are they also above?
I don't know if there's a grade change.
It's
at
pretty
this
flat.
location.
Okay,
More or less follows that contour.
okay. And then, sorry to bring the developer back up, but just to bring in the previous question, do we know if there's a precast wall there abutting, or is there fencing? Do we know what's going to go in right there between the two lots?
That'll just be fencing.
It's just gonna be this, like a vinyl fencing, essentially? Okay.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Oh, right now it is existing precast?
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Very good. Getting Kirk his steps in today, so appreciate it, yeah. Any other discussion or questions, thoughts?
Nope, I think we're pretty tied to the MDA.
We are tied to, yeah, we are
So-
somewhat beholden to that as well, but, yep.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve item 4.6 with staff's 4 recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Heather,
I'll second.
second by Preston. We'll call for a vote. Preston?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And Forrest?
Yes.
Great, that motion passes. All right, we'll move on to our final item of the evening, item 4.7, consideration of preliminary plat for the Joshua Tree at Olympia for phases 1, 2, and 3.
The last time you have to hear from me tonight.
Oh, but you're going on vacation, so.
All right, so this is the Joshua Tree development. As I mentioned before, all three of these phases touch on existing residential development, so all three need to be considered by the Planning Commission. There's 210 residential lots, 55 single-family detached units, and 155 attached units. And that is the actual number, that's correct. So, access comes from Oceanside, and then as part of the Olympia backbone dedication, there will be that construction access that comes down, comes off of Olympia Boulevard and back up, ties up on the west side of Joshua Tree back up to 126. This one does include a 1.2 acre park, and 28% of it is provided in open space. The density in this development is about 12 units an acre, which falls into that village designation in the MDA plan. The only concern from zoning, again, in addition to making sure that there's adequate access, is to ensure that there's 50% live growth achieved in all landscaped areas. Looking at the landscape plan, that was pretty evident, but just to make sure as we get into it with a little more fine detail. And then working again with staff to update the land use plan. I believe this was shown as part of a neighborhood overall when it should be a village. So as this gets developed, we just want to make sure that those plans, again, accurately depict what's taking place. So you can kind of see the layout of the neighborhood here. It seems like the further west you go, the more density you get. There's the centrally located park. The applicant has provided, I don't know if you've noticed, but in several of these sections, the applicant's providing some bump outs along the streets for improved pedestrian access across those streets. And then
Bump outs, but not raised.
What's that?
Bump outs, but not raised, right? The pedestrian across,
Well,
they're not
yeah.
raised.
So the curb will
The curb
extend
comes
out.
in, right?
Right.
I just want to make sure, because it
Right.
almost looked like they were raised, but yeah.
Right.
Here's
So
the
wherever you have
enhanced.
these street crossings, you'll have one of those little bump outs that makes that pedestrian connection a little closer.
Yep.
I've gone through this several times and looked at sidewalk connections and making sure that those line up and make sense. You're not on a sidewalk and all of a sudden you're in the middle of nowhere. So these pedestrian connections do comply with the MDA as well as the plan itself. So that being said, I'm just going to go through these plans. If there's anything that you want me to stop and look at, just let me know. But you can kind of see, and this is a good example of where these bump outs are. You can see on this Goat Mountain Lane, about halfway through the page, you can see an example of one of those bump outs. And then I think this is where that 50% coverage came in. Just in the park strip here, it didn't look like that 50% was quite being met, so we wanted to make sure that that was indeed being met as the standard. And then in a previous iteration, there was a misinterpretation of the site triangles. So you can't have a tree in a site triangle, but it was being based off of a different standard. So when I went and talked to engineering, they said that this could be looked at on a different standard that would allow more street trees to be replaced in these park strips, specifically along this little stretch of road here. So we'll just work with the applicant and make sure that they were actually provided in an earlier plan and then taken out. So putting them back, I think, shouldn't be a problem. So again, just a few more conditions, just in terms of the street trees and site triangles, and then the 50% growth as well. But other than that, pretty standard. Any questions?
Clint, what size was the park on this one?
Sorry?
The park, what size was the park?
The park was just over 1 acre, I think 1.2 acres.
Do you know what they're planning to put in there?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what they're planning to put in there?
Yeah, I can go to, so this plan here kind of shows what's being provided in that park. So there's a little playground, a pavilion area, there's some trails that go through there, some grass areas for play and stuff, so.
And then just on which one had the 7-acre park? Was that the?
That was on the
was the
Olympia
first one.
backbone, the first one.
Okay, and staff will work on that park with them?
Yeah, that's gonna be publicly dedicated, so they're working with the city on
Okay.
what amenities will go in there, what that will look like.
I have a question for you, Clint. On that little park, is that amount of parking there, is that a required amount, or is that just voluntary, they're putting in parking right there?
Yeah, it's pretty much voluntary of what they're putting in there. There's not a requirement in the MDA for a certain number of parking stalls based on the size of the park. So where this is a privately owned, it's pretty much up to them to provide the parking.
Privately
that
owned
they feel.
park.
Yeah.
I did have one more question. Will this be an HOA?
I'm sure it will, yeah.
Yes, all of Olympia will be part of a master HOA.
All of Olympia will have an HOA? Okay, thank you.
Great. Any questions? They're both standing. Get them now. So. Yeah.
I guess my only concern is...
We'll ask questions. This is on for a hearing. We can get
Okay.
comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's any questions, if not, we'll do a hearing and then we can have some discussion, if you're okay with that. Okay, again, this is item 4.7 is on for a public hearing. So at this time, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing for comments, for any additional comments. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion by Preston,
I'll second.
second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Go ahead, Preston, you said you had some questions or
Yeah, I
comments?
just had a question/concern. I see you have parking kind of dedicated throughout this development, and then kind of that, I guess, adjacent to the park, you don't have as much parking dedicated, which is fine. I'm just wondering, is the parking next to the park kind of planned to compensate for that?
Kind of some overflow parking of sorts,
I could see it being used a little bit for that, but all these units have a two-car garage at a minimum. And then we've got on-street parking that's allowed as well. So all in all, we've got plenty of parking. That's one
Yeah.
of our big concerns as you drive through, like Daybreak, for instance. There's a lot of cars that are out on the roads. That's what we've tried to provide, especially in these townhomes and things,
So-
garages, and so they've got their own space.
So Goat Mountain Lane, along those lines, the width of that, you know, it appears, you know, with the pop-outs that you do for the pedestrian crossings, that'll allow, the nice thing about that, you got the parking then that's adjacent, so it kind of fills in that area well. I'm assuming that's the case, so there'll be plenty of room for parking on both sides of Goat Lane, or Goat Mountain Lane, so, okay.
And then,
That's a 55-foot wide road.
55
So-
foot, yeah, perfect.
Yep.
so with that, basically, is it necessary to have that much parking for such a small park then? Or will residents just end up using it, and will it just become a parking lot for residents next to a park that's just kind of almost a blight for the little park and little bit
That'll
of
be
green
up to
space that they have?
the HOA to enforce. and
Right,
things
it's an
as
HOA
well.
enforcement,
Yeah.
but to prevent having to have an HOA issue on this, I'm kind of forward thinking.
Yeah.
Is that necessary, do you think, or?
No, it was mostly put in there based off the builder's comments and what he wanted to see. And one of those things he wanted to see was the ability for people to go there and use the pavilion and drive there from other parts of the
Family
community.
visitors and things?
Yeah, and so it was mostly that. But that is a really good point that I'll bring up to the builder on that parking. But that was more his decision.
Got it.
But yeah, not necessary for our parking standards, so.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be an HOA issue, but.
Yeah, it will. Be nice to, yeah, but fortunately, the difference between here and other developments, you do have a 55-foot asphalt road that
Yeah.
accommodates parking better and still get two vehicles through as well.
That's the
Even
hope.
with parking on both sides, you don't
Right.
have that in a lot of the others, so that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, parking's difficult, and we'd rather see the cars off the streets, so
Yeah.
that's why I've tried to provide as much as we can within the units, so.
Yeah. And hopefully they don't use their two-car garage for storage, but they will. But, so they have two in the garage and two
Does
on their,
happen,
on the
yes.
driveway, but yeah, agreed. Any other questions, comments,
Can the
discussions?
garages fit an RV?
Those would be some pretty big
That's a
garages.
future discussion.
I don't think we can get there, but we'll try. Thanks.
Thank you.
No, that's what the parking lot is for.
There you go. Any other thoughts, discussion?
I appreciate the connections in this.
Yeah. Yeah, the other development, I didn't comment on that either, but it was nice how you had that park, I think it was the first one we saw, the park in the middle to allow through traffic, pedestrian traffic through it. I thought that was a good touch and a good thought as well. So, yeah, very nice. Okay. Last item, come on.
I know.
I don't want to pressure anybody. If there's comments or thoughts or discussion, we got all night.
Well, the density for this is already approved.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for item 4.7 to approve the item with staff's 6 recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Heather.
Second.
Second by Preston. I'll call for a vote. Preston?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And Forrest?
Yes.
Great, that item also passes as well. So thank you for being here tonight. That is our last item on the agenda, so nice work. We appreciate your time as well. Any other thoughts or comments from the commission tonight? You had made the comment earlier about maybe looking at what we can do to provide better, more mature plants in some of these developments as a
some
part of the
landscaping.
ordinances.
I did have another comment with that for staff maybe.
Okay.
So in like the hillside overlay areas and the forestry zones, can we maybe look at requiring different fencing and landscaping requirements? I know that we saw that lot that has that very noticeable fence. Is that something that we could
Are you
do?
saying you want to like review what the requirements are?
And maybe change them if possible? Just so we don't get another incident where we have a fence that's that noticeable on the hillside?
You don't love the
fence.
Great
I
Dell
don't
of
love
Harriman?
You know, I've been wondering about that as well.
bad.
Yeah, I would like to review that.
Okay.
Or what might happen sometimes is that you'll have like a larger lot, but you'll allow for maybe a fence for privacy right around maybe the more developed portion.
Yeah, instead of the
And where
whole
it's
thing.
natural, maybe you either limit the kind of fencing that could happen there. Like if you did a wire fence on wood stakes or poles, it would be virtually invisible.
Yes.
You wouldn't notice it.
From a
That would be
distance,
more
yeah.
consistent with a more rural type, site. So, because you're typically going to see very large lots in those areas, right?
Keep the
It's
hills
not
beautiful.
Yes.
It's also not typical to see somebody willing to spend that kind of money to
Not
do a vinyl
typical,
fence
still
around
happens.
that large of a perimeter. That's very unusual.
Yeah. Most folks would want to leave it natural and looking.
I just kind of wonder if they had issues with hunters and trespassing on the
Hunting,
property.
we can't hunt in there.
Yeah, so
You know,
long as you're like 200
invisible barbed wire works
kind
great.
of
Not in Sully
fence,
County.
that would blend in with the,
Oh, we could in our hills.
with the
been
the landscape,
hunting
the
and
natural
I'm
landscape, the
joking.
topography, that still provides that security maybe, or.
Yeah, is it possible that is in violation, though? It is. Ugh, don't shake your head, Clint. Don't. It should be.
Yeah, so that's what you're saying, is let's look at that.
Let's look at that. Did you guys notice that on the?
Oh, yeah.
Any other comments? Great. All right, future meetings, next planning commission I'm trying to look at my watch here. So next week, let's see. There's not a council meeting next week, okay. And it's not, I had to look, it's not a fifth Wednesday month either. Okay, very good. All right, so next planning commission is on August 2nd, and then council meeting on August 9th, and then another planning commission on August 16th. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion by Heather and a second by Forrest. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.